I hope you can hear me. I hope you can see me. Good morning, everybody. It is Thursday, the 16th of January. Shit, time is actually flying. Gives me hope that we actually get past this year in, not too much time. Sort of, you know what I mean. All right. Stream has started. Let me see if I can hear myself. Yes. I can. That is good. Hey Ori, how are you doing? Good morning. And yes, so I am somewhat less than awake today. I did not sleep well, but we got to do the best we can. This is also the last sprint for this week because tomorrow at like 9, I think, I have another doctor's appointment and thus can't actually do the sprinting thing. So yeah, I'll be back with that on Monday. I will, of course, try to record more pirate videos in the next couple of days. In fact, I need to actually call the surgeon to get like an appointment during the first sprint. So that's something that will happen, and they're gonna remove like the rest of the root from the tooth, and then I can go back to my dentist and get. Well, I get told how much I have to pay for like a replacement tooth, and there's like two options. One is technically the better one, like having like a full implant, but that's apparently goes like prices go up to almost like 2,000 euros, and I don't have that kind of money. On the other hand, even the cheaper replacement is apparently also like could go up to 800, 900, 1,000 euros. So who knows? Maybe I'll just stick with the pirate thing. Hi, Britain. Good morning. Well, good evening for you. A Mormon mystery novel. Now that sounds like something. Do you have a title? I might have to read that at some point. Uh, yeah. Maybe I need to go on a dangerous quest to restore time. Maybe I need to go to that Fountain of Youth kind of thing. I've recently read a book about it. There's like this. So after reading On Stranger Tides, I remembered that bit about the Fountain of Youth in Eric by Terry Pratchett, where the Discworld equivalent to Juan Ponce de Leon, they hang out and you have like a somewhat insensitive, definitely somewhat insensitive bit about the Aztec equivalent on Discworld. And later on, Rincewind and Eric meet that Ponce de Leon equivalent back in hell, and it's like, so you didn't find the Fountain of Youth? And he said, no, I found it, and it's actually working. So they just left out one important detail. There should be a sign that says "boil before drinking." And it's just like one of those like wonderful things that make Terry Pratchett so good. Is like, such a stupid joke. It's like the Fountain of Youth works, but you gotta boil before drinking because otherwise it'll poison you. City of Brick and Shadow. Now that's something I'll have to look into because, yeah, Mormon mystery. Eric is not necessarily the best of books, even within Discworld. I mean, it's a very short one, and it's very clearly sort of like a send up of Faust and the trip to to the underworld and so forth. It has probably more jokes per page than most other Discworld books, simply by being so heavily focused on just like parodying one specific kind of piece of media in a way that you maybe get in the first in the like in Color of Magic and Light Fantastic. But I think technically Eric is a better sidekick for Rincewind than Two Flower was. So it's fun in that regard. You get some Siege of Troy jokes that are pretty fun. You get the whole like underworld bit is really cool. The underworld bit is really funny, where hell is like managed like a modern corporation in a lot of ways, and all the demons hate it because now they have to go to meetings and stuff and can no longer, just run around with like pitchforks and torture people. And instead, everyone has to listen to music, and there's like plastic plants everywhere, and and now the demons hate it as well as the damned souls, and you get some really interesting and fun bits there. So it is interesting. It has some cool bits, but plot wise, it's not necessarily a high point in Discworld. Yeah, that's exactly the point. That's exactly the point, Ori. It's just like a jungle fountain. You should probably boil it before drinking. But the same way, like I just love that quote in that in the Men at Arms that I recently reread. It's like the axiom "honest men have nothing to fear from the police" is currently under review by the Axioms Appeal Board, and it's it's the very specific Terry Pratchett way of making a political statement in a in a footnote at the end of the day. Yeah, it certainly is a common trope now. I think Eric is late 80s, early 90s. I don't know the exact publication date at this point, but it's a very early one. So I think Pratchett was somewhat ahead of the curve there. What did Alan Moore do to you that you had to rant about him? I thought he was still one of the so far good ones, so to speak. I mean, I haven't heard anything too abominable about him yet. But then maybe that's because he's stayed mostly out of, the limelight in a lot of ways. All right. There is an audiobook of City of Brick and Shadow, so I guess I could technically go and read it if I feel like it next month when I have money for audiobooks again, or like have credits. So good to know. I'll keep an eye on that one. Hey, Amanda, I'm alive. I'm doing things. I'm somewhat wrecked. I had to go to a meeting in a pub yesterday evening, and like most bars in Germany are like smoking is banned in most bars, but there are smoking bars, and it's one of those. And it just reminded me of how bad it used to be when like all bars were still smoking bars in Germany, and you go have like one drink, and you come home, you smell like god awful because cold cigarette smoke is just like one of the worst things ever. And no, I don't just talk into my phone when I write. I just write on my computer, and I type. I mean, on my computer, I just type normally. I learned 10-finger typing at school. I'm pretty fast at it. If I want to be, and I'm pretty good at typing. I don't make many typing mistakes. I mean, spelling mistakes, of course, but typing, I'm pretty solid. And when I have to type something on my phone, I use the phone keyboard, and it sucks. I just really hate, you know, like speech to text is still a bit of a problem, and I just hate it. It's so fucking frustrating. I have friends who use it, and you can always tell when you get like a message from someone who has just like uh, dictated it to his phone and to their phone, and then you're like, well, no, I know what you were trying to say, but it's not what came out. Well, what a surprise that Alan Moore is somewhat left wing. Shocking. Now that would certainly be an interesting approach, indeed, Ori. Yeah, and the thing is, it's not that long ago when that general smoking ban for restaurants and bars kind of happened in Germany. And the way they did is like a full smoking ban, unless you have a dedicated smoking area, which has to be locked, not locked off, but like have an actual closed off, have a door that's closed so the smoke doesn't get out into the rest of the place. Or you're an all smoking bar, and then you technically need to check IDs because that's 18 plus. Because smoking, you can only buy cigarettes over 18 at this point. Used to be 16, but it's 18, I think. So that's the rules. Obviously, no one checks IDs because it's Germany, and you can sell beer to people when they're 16. So would be bad business. But yeah, that's kind of how that whole thing worked at the time. Yeah, speech and text in public is super awkward. To be fair, so is sending voice messages in public. So Although maybe that's like an age thing, because I have friends who are like a good deal younger than me, and they have no problem whatsoever to just like pull out their phone and rant like voice messages in public without even a headset, just like yelling into their phone. And I'm like, that's something I would never do. So yeah, what can I say? Yeah, I mean the dentist thing yesterday, I was positive. I was happy with the results in one way, because they, it was the first time I went to a dentist in like forever. Actually, since I knocked out that tooth for the first time, which was in 2017 or 2018, so it's been 6 years since I've been to a dentist. And back then, yeah, I had to pay for that first replacement tooth, like part of it as well, and I didn't at the time, and I forgot, and all of that. And then they threatened me with lawyers, and that's when I kind of felt bad about going back to like a regular checkup to that dentist, and then I kind of just didn't. So when I went there yesterday, I was scared that like there were all kinds of other issues with my teeth as well, because 6 years of not checking on your teeth can be a bit of a problem. Turns out, no, I'm good, except for the missing tooth and like another tooth where I knocked off a bit even earlier when I fell down. No, I fell up stairs in a hostel in Sofia in Bulgaria in 2017. I knocked off like one of my back molars, and those are the two things wrong with my teeth. All my teeth are fine except for um, uh, stuff happen, like external forces have damaged my teeth. So that's good. But I now have to call those the surgeon to schedule like the whole thing to get that stuff removed, and it's gonna be fun, I guess. I mean, not really, but it'll give me like a longer, sort of like a better idea of how long I'll be walking around with this, and when I'll get some form of replacement for this, and all of that. And it's so stupid, right? I feel weird about. I mean, I'm doing the pirate stuff now, and I'm excited for it. On the other hand, I'm sitting here and I'm like, it feels wrong talking about other books while looking and sounding like this, because at least how it sounds in my head, it does certainly impact my speech, having that hole in my front teeth, right? It does impact how I talk, and I feel like if I now sit down and talk about, say, Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor, or The Power Broker by Robert Moses, which is such a good book, um, it feels even less like I'm worried that looking and sounding the way I do at the moment would impact how people perceive my presentation of a book and take away from the things I have to say about those books. And maybe that's something I have to overcome and go, well, I mean, fuck you if you think that having having a tooth knocked out makes me less able of understanding why this book is good. But sometimes that takes a bit of like running up to actually get to mentally, I think. Yeah, definitely, Ori. I mean, the thing with like dental care in Germany is that you technically you should go once per year or every 6 months, like twice per year. I'm not quite sure. You should go to like a regular checkup to your dentist, and that's covered by healthcare. And you get like one of those wonderful bonus cards or whatever you call them, and then when something happens and you need like more dental care than just a regular checkup and cleaning, you need like a tooth replacement or anything of the sorts, right? If that happens, the amount you have to pay or the amount that your healthcare covers of that procedure is determined by how often or like how regularly you did those checkups. So if you go there after like 6 years like me and you have like just like regular issues with your teeth, healthcare would cover much less than if I had gone to the regular checkup every 6 months before and nothing had happened, which is, in general, I get the idea because you want people to take care of their teeth and all of that. And having something figured out immediately or after a few months instead of like after a few years makes those procedures much cheaper for healthcare as well. So I get the approach. What pissed me off back then was when I knocked out my tooth. I was like, no checkup whatsoever has anything to do with the fact that I fall over like a rock and knock out a tooth. That's that has no impact on that. That's not me not taking care of my teeth. That's me not taking care of my life. That's a difference, and that kind of annoyed me in a way. But obviously, there's nothing I can do about it. But so yeah, I should probably go back to doing these regular checkups at the dentist and just overcome my anxiety of doctors, which is not about like medical procedures. I have no problems with medical procedures at all. I just really hate paperwork and administrative stuff. So getting through the front office of a doctor is much scarier to me than actually, having the actual medical procedure afterwards. But I don't know what to do about that. Hyper eloquence. I don't know about that. It's an interesting thing. So I read The Power Broker. I wanted to read it for a long time. I think like the first time I heard about The Power Broker was when Robin D. Laws, the tabletop role playing game designer, mentioned it on a podcast he used to have. I probably still has with Ken Hite, and I've stopped listening to those for like a couple of years ago. I don't know, sometime during the pandemic. I don't even know why. It's a really interesting podcast usually because it brings up a lot of the stuff that I'm interested in, weird occult shit and ridiculous stuff and so forth. And Robin Laws read The Power Broker back then, and he talked about it. And then I've seen fantasy authors talk about The Power Broker. And recently, my former flatmate, talked about that he was listening to the 99% Invisible podcast and they were reading The Power Broker. And I'm like, yeah, good thing you remember. You reminded me that I wanted to read The Power Broker, and then I checked once again. And I saw that it finally got an audiobook, and then I obviously listened to the whole thing, and it's so good. And since then, YouTube always pushes those 99% Invisible podcast episodes into my recommendations, and I listened to like the first two, and now I'm disappointed because they're long. And yes, the interview with Robert Caro is obviously cool because Robert Caro is such a fun person to listen to when he talks about stuff because he gets so incredibly excited about the things he does. And he has probably the most New York accent I've ever heard outside of parody. But when the rest of the podcast just talk about the book, I'm like, that's that's what you consider like serious analysis of the book. I'm surprised. But yeah, maybe I should make a video on The Power Broker because it is really good. And the ones that I've seen outside of the 99% Invisible on BookTube are somewhat lacking. I still love the guy who even references the 99PI podcast, and he calls it epic review of an epic masterwork. And the video is 11 minutes long, and the book has like 1,200 pages. He spends less than 1 minute per 100 pages in this thing. If 11 minutes is epic, I don't know what is. I mean, so maybe I should talk about The Power Broker. It's a really, really good book, and you can learn a lot about like how to write a very compelling nonfiction book in it. Like that whole thing that Robert Caro has talked about. And if I talk about the book, I will probably mention it again. Is like there's like the opening paragraph. Like in the opening paragraph, he lists off all the like the main highways that Robert Moses built, and it's like this long list. And Robert Caro has said that he basically went back to the Iliad and like the list of ships in the Iliad, and he took that as his model to list the different expressways that Robert Moses built, and changed up the different the order of those expressways until it sounded right. And that's like the level of attention to detail for a nonfiction book, like a 1,200-page nonfiction book, that I think is interesting to learn from when we're talking about nonfiction, because people sometimes forget that nonfiction also needs like rhetoric skill and prose skill in a lot of ways that it adds to the presentation of the information, because nonfiction is not just about information, it's also about how you present it. And I think The Power Broker is a book where you can really see how he does that. I mean, it's 1,200 pages about urban planning, and it's actually a really, really good and gripping book that is hard to put down. That's an achievement that not many people manage in a lot of ways. Hey, Nexi, how you doing? Sorry, Nexi, I did not catch that message, but I'm also sorry that you're feeling bad, apparently. I mean, I get it. It's a pretty fucked up time at the moment in all kinds of ways, so I totally get that. I mean, the problem there, Britain, is that yes, it is very good advice and it sounds trite, but that's like the problem with all of these forms of advice, because you got to start with this relatively generic thing, and then you got to find ways to apply to your specific, um, specific situation. See, like finding ways to keep going for me means usually finding something I can get angry about, because that's where I get like energy from. But that's me. There's obviously other ways of doing that. I have not read that one because it's what can I say? I've read a lot of books on on Nazis in just by virtue of studying history in Germany and going to school in Germany and having history classes in Germany. So I don't necessarily need another 1,500 pages on that subject. I did read what's his name, came out last year or 2023, Anti-Semitism: A German History. I read that one because it goes more into like the specifics of anti-Semitism in Germany from like the late 18th century onwards, in all the way to today, basically. It does have a happy ending, but it also has one of those like darker cliffhangers looking at politics right now. So that there is there may be a sequel, and I'm not happy with it. What was that book? Peter Longerich, German history professor in London, and it's from, I think, 2023 or something like that. But it's also like a 1,000-page just monograph on a very depressing topic. So that's the last time I read something Nazi related. So I don't know if I feel like reading Rise and Fall of the of the Third Reich. It's not necessarily something I feel I need in my life. Yeah, yeah. The problem with these kind of lines is that they're kind of true, but we also tend to valorize sort of like these using terms like nobility is something that I feel can be somewhat dangerous because you shouldn't fight because it's noble or anything. You should just like oppose things that are wrong because they're wrong, and that should be sort of like at the core of who you want to be as a person. At least that's like how I see that. Nobility can lead to some really dangerous things, I feel. Um, Britain, it's totally fine to be sick of Nazis. The question usually is like, how do you deal with things that you are sick of? There's stuff that you can be sick of that you should just like ignore and just like, yeah, put out of your mind. And then there's stuff where you need to be aware of the fact that it's an ongoing problem, right? Like maybe the Indiana Jones type of Nazi is no longer around in that form, at least not for now. But the danger is still there. So while yeah, I too am very much sick of Nazis in all kinds of ways. Just going well, let's leave that behind. It doesn't necessarily work if you still have people waving swastika flags and marching through your town, right? That's I mean, not waving swastika flags in Germany because that's illegal, but you know that's kind of the danger there. So yes, you should be sick of Nazis. The world should be sick of Nazis, but that that shouldn't, on the other hand, mean that we should ignore them. We should just be mad that we still have to think about them and talk about them. That's I think the right approach there. But yeah, what can you do? Well, I mean, you don't have to read about Nazis and like the Nazis unless you're, yeah, I mean, unless you're studying 20th century history at university, then you may not have that much of a choice. But then maybe your choice should be whether you want to study that specific part of history. I mean, I don't know what you actually study at university, so I no idea there. But yeah, your country at the moment, meaning the US next, right, and not Poland. I know you're originally like you have Polish. I don't know if you were born in Poland and moved to the US, or if your parents like you mentioned that you have like a Polish background. That's why I'm asking. Um, See, that's the thing, right? Nexi, Nazis. There's layers to this, right? And the fact that someone is a monster or does monstrous things, on the one hand, does not necessarily prevent them from doing like from doing yeah like human gestures on like a small scale and seeing someone and going like, well, you look like my son, and he's those two things are unfortunately not mutually exclusive. It's Nazis are not necessarily, or like bad people are not necessarily like the villains in Wolfenstein, right? They can be human and still do terrible things, which is one of those things that like I feel you have like had books on that kind of stuff. There's I keep forgetting the title. There's a book about one guy going back to Germany like in the late 40s, right after the war, and talking to people, just like normal people in villages, and how they perceived and how they joined the Nazi thing or not. And yeah, most of them are just like regular people, and doing terrible things is unfortunately something that can come very easily to a lot of us. And I think that's certainly a warning that we need to be aware, keep in mind, because it's easy to go like, well, I would never do that. And questions like always, are you sure though? Like, how sure are you, and where's that breaking point? The US is certainly in a weird place at the moment. I agree, and we have like our elections in Germany in a month. I need to look up the exact date, but it's sometime in February, and it's gonna be rough. It's gonna be rough as well. Um, Also, Elon Musk is obviously now a fan of our far right party as well, so there's that. I hope that Germany is still too far behind when it comes to politics and technology and stuff like that for Elon Musk to have the kind of impact that he can have in other countries. That's like maybe one of the ways where like a digital backwardness that Germany certainly has can be can be a bonus. Ah, okay. So yes, you're talking about the US. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's a wait and see at least until after the inauguration and see how things go once you know once the new regime is actually in power and can do things, because that's sort of like when we figure out how able they are to actually put all the dumb shit that they've said into power, and how much of those ridiculous things that they've said they are able and willing to actually put to paper, and how much is just bluster before the election. That's always a question with every regime, but with this one in particular, yeah, I don't know. The problem is, of course, once they do that and they get away with it, that's kind of when it's basically too late to do anything about it, I guess. So I don't know. Yeah, Britain, but that's the point, right? Like, it's always said about things like fighting against injustice and all of that stuff. Like, and I feel like the question is the term nobility, what we assume that means, how it's tied into specific perceptions and so forth. And doing something because you want to appear noble is, you know, is that the right motivation to do things? Also, why are we still calling it nobility, right? Isn't nobility basically being richer than everyone else and being able to use your wealth, mostly in land and property, to get away with being a massive dick? Isn't that like historically what the nobility did? You see you see what I mean? Like the term is something that I I find troubling. I'm not disparaging the act of fighting against injustice. I'm trying to question the framing and the term nobility there, because I don't know, man. There's a lot of stuff like historically bound up in that specific term that we might want to interrogate. Yeah, just yeah, hoping you don't blow yourselves up, but also don't blow up the planet by accident as well, because that's like the whole problem with like a this form of globalized world is, of course, that whatever the US votes for, the rest of the world has to suffer through that in a way that, say, whatever the people in Luxembourg vote for does not actually impact the world on the same level. So it's that outsized like international impact that something like this has is sort of like the problem. Is another layer to the problem, obviously. Yeah, that's very Zizek in a lot of ways. But shall we actually try to do the sprinting thing? I have delayed long enough. I should call a doctor, which is one of the things that I'm really bad at, like just calling doctors and talking to them, making appointments and stuff. It's not good. And as I said, tomorrow no sprints, because I have to go to my psychiatrist to get more ADHD medication, because I have to, show up in person and talk to them for them to give me the prescription, and that's what I'll have to do tomorrow. So yeah, let's actually go for 45. That means 20 past. 20 past, I'll be back, and then we'll try to be productive, like even more productive and all of that. And I am back. How are you guys doing? Did you get stuff done? All right, and good night, Nexi. I assume you're already gone. All right, Britain, once you're back, we need to talk about the Zizek versus Peterson thing, because while I'm not a fan of Slavoj Žižek, I think there is this is a very, very wrong comparison there. That's something we need to talk about, because that's yeah, I mean, nobility is certainly strapping on your saber and conquering India, which is, why, say, the Flashman novels by George MacDonald Fraser are so interesting, because they're exactly sort of like subverting that by showing how incredibly bad a lot of that was, both on, obviously on a colonialist, imperialist level in general, but also on like a personal level, because the people doing that were not exactly noble or anything like that. They were mostly, well, opportunists. So yeah, that's that. Another thing, I got my appointment. It's on the 7th of February, so I guess lots of pirate content coming up in the next couple of weeks. We'll see how that goes. Maybe I can, in fact, uh, do the whole like 3 Revenger books by Alistair Reynolds as well, which might be cool, because I don't think I've seen anyone talk about them on BookTube. Because all of BookTube always talks about House of Suns, and that's that. I mean, obviously, some people have talked about different Alistair Reynolds novels, so I'm not going no one, but like it seems that the one that everyone always loves is House of Suns, and I've read that, and I don't think I wouldn't rank it as one of Reynolds' best novels, is what I'm saying. But maybe people are just astonished by how it suddenly is all about like thousands or tens of thousands of years, and everyone's like, "Whoa, this must be a good book because number big." And that's certainly an issue that I've seen with a lot of people talking about books in fantasy and science fiction. We're often very susceptible to uh, the charm, or the whatever you want to call it, of the big number, whether it's like long ass books, or how many characters are in a book, or stuff like that. And it's kind of frustrating, um, because that's a very, very specific approach to reading books that I don't think works well. So yeah, that's what I did. Did reply to all the comments on the pirate video. So thanks everyone for watching that and commenting already. It may sound stupid, but filming out on the balcony feels different. It makes me feel much more insecure, because obviously my neighbors can hear me. It also makes me I'm also super insecure about doing something like putting on the bandana and pulling out the saber and everything. So the fact that some people actually enjoyed that makes me happy, and helps certainly with me doing more of that in the future. The other thing that I just looked at, and it's so frustrating. I go on I opened YouTube and I get like everyone is now talking about Neil Gaiman as if it's completely new, and I'm like, well, it wasn't new. Yes, I'm glad that like a competent journalistic outlet finally tackled that stuff, and it's a really well written article. But now all the grifters come out of the woodwork and go like, well, Neil Gaiman, progressive degenerate. John Del Arroz does apparently Del Arroz, however you pronounce his name, and fuck that guy, does like 5 videos per day about how degenerate and bad and so forth Gaiman is, and also apparently, according to his titles, I've never watched one of his videos. J.K. Rowling is single-handedly defeating mainstream publishing. I somehow doubt that's the case, but I guess it kind of is the final point where right-wing grifters have finally entered book space in full force and are making not only their inroads there, but also making their being successful there now, which is obviously it's the least important fallout of the whole Neil Gaiman thing, but man, it sucks. And I don't know what to do about it. I mean, obviously, block the channel, but it's not going to change the problem, does it? Is it? But yeah, that's how I spent the first sprint. Calling the surgeon, getting the appointment, calling the dentist, telling them about the appointment because they wanted me to come back and do like another checkup or something before that. I don't know. It's all weird in a lot of ways, and I guess the next part will be trying to write some more, and we'll see how that goes. And then I'll probably get to finally read Death of the Author by Nadia Okorafor. At the gym, which I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but it's like I listened to like the first part, the opening chapter of Death of the Author, and yeah, it's gonna be like an intense book, I guess, one that does sort of like require some paying attention. No, I don't have like I mean, beyond like my current tooth situation, I don't have any like health issues. Like obviously being blind, but like I'm physically all fit and all that. It's good there. And I'm very happy that you got like that you qualify for the healthcare now, the free one. No, totally fine. No, totally fine. Like the health thing is the tooth thing is just like that. I knocked out that tooth, and it needs to be fixed, and that's gonna take some time. And but that's it. But I wouldn't call that like a health thing because it's obviously it's a health thing, but it's not like it's more physical, I guess. It requires mechanical assistance, a mechanical intervention, not like a medical one, which is the wrong way of thinking about it. I know, but it kind of feels different to me. Hey, Apollo, and have a good day as well, and thanks. Yeah, so Death of the Author next for me, and hopefully next week other books are obviously more pirate stuff. And everyone is asking me to read Pirate Latitudes by Michael Crichton, and I'm so conflicted because on the one hand everyone wants to, and it would definitely do well, right? That's the point. It's like it's a Michael Crichton title, everyone loves Michael Crichton, and I fucking hate Michael Crichton because he did some absolutely heinous stuff, like, being the kind of guy he was. Obviously, he's dead, and good riddance. Being the kind of guy known for writing sort of, well-researched sciencey thrillers where the science was, usually fairly okay, and then he went and wrote State of Fear about like how climate change is a hoax and all of that stuff. And when he got backlash, he took like one of the main critics and turned him into a character in his next novel, where he turned him into a pedophile. And I'm like, that's so far beyond the pale. I don't know if I want to read or give like any more attention to that guy, because it would require me to talk about that instead of like pirate stuff. And I want this to be fun and be piratey, and not me explaining why Michael Crichton sucks and why people who love Michael Crichton or still love Michael Crichton after they're aware of what he did suck. So that's something I need to work at. I don't know. Gonna figure that one out at some point, I guess, in the next couple of days. Until then, I certainly, have time to do the one on Stranger Tides and the one on the pirates, and guess I'll find a way to scrape together some cash to buy the Amina al-Sirafi audiobook and go through that one. And yeah, after that, the Revenger book. So I have enough other pirate stuff. Yeah, that's the thing. Like with Michael Crichton's, like he certainly, I don't know, like how, because it's been ages since I looked at any like Michael Crichton books, right? I don't know how much of a weird reactionary person he was before he wrote that specific book. And I don't want to go all Dan Simmons on him and read like all of his stuff to go like, well, clearly he was that already. But the State of Fear thing was really bad, and yeah, doing that kind of stuff to your to like an outspoken critic is just like, as I said, beyond the pale. It's the same way that a German author, Martin Walser, took a Polish German Jewish literary critic, Marcel Reich Ranitzky, and turned him into like the worst anti-Semitic stereotype you could imagine after having like an argument with him in public. And it's like, you have that power as an author, but you should not actually wield it that way and go that low. So that's why I'm holding off on Pirate Latitudes, even though like everyone tells me to do that book. Maybe it's even a good book. I don't know. It was published, posthumously, I think. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe Going Revenger is more fun. I mean, it is certainly a lot of fun, that book, and like all three of those books. I keep forgetting what the other ones are called. Bone Silence and Shadow Captain, right? But space pirates. Hello, Britain. How are you doing? Yeah, Britain. Comparing Slavoj Žižek with Jordan Peterson is objectively wrong on a lot of ways. I'm saying that as someone who's not exactly a fan of Slavoj Žižek, but Žižek actually knows what he's talking about when he's talking about, say, Marxism and talking about philosophy and so forth. Jordan Peterson does not. That's the big thing. Jordan Peterson is a psychiatrist who's read a lot of like Jungian psychologist in a lot of ways, and that's that. Jordan Peterson knows fuck all about Marxism, knows fuck all about philosophy, so you can't kind of compare them in that regard. Slavoj Žižek obviously is media savvy, and a lot of people like his social media stuff. So in that regard, you could potentially compare the two. But when it comes to the things they talk about in public, the content of their public speaking, so to speak, so to say, Slavoj Žižek is qualified and knows what he's doing. Jordan Peterson does not, and that's like one key thing you need to take away. Like, if Jordan Peterson's self-help books help you personally, I will not, gainsay anything of that. Those 12 rules for life sound pretty solid. Like, clean your room, stand up straight. Those are generally, they're super vacuous, but that's like, all self-help books. That's fine. Peterson knows how to do self-help. that's all good. But when he talks about politics, when he talks about religion, all of that stuff, he's insanely wrong about all of it. Like his depiction of Marxism or Marxist philosophy is just like, yeah, it's not based in reality, which is why that whole discussion they had, that whole debate between Peterson and Zizek was so ridiculous, because you could just like tell that like Zizek just could just play with Peterson because he doesn't know what he's doing there. So comparing them, I think, is dangerous, and seeing Jordan Peterson as a public intellectual is dangerous as well, because he's not an intellectual in that regard. He's an expert in one specific field, and I'm not qualified to judge him when he talks about psychology and stuff like that. I think, like, from my casual reading, I think evolutionary psychology, like evopsych, is bullshit, but I haven't read enough to make that more than just like a vibes thing. So I wouldn't, judge him on that. But whenever Jordan Peterson talks about politics, when he talks about philosophy, when he talks about religion, there I am qualified to, have an opinion. And there I can see that he doesn't know what he's doing and what he's talking about. So he's not an intellectual. And seeing it as that is incredibly dangerous. So yeah, that's my TED talk on Jordan Peterson and Slavoj Žižek. The thing is with Zizek, that the stuff that he is doing, like academically, is pretty dense and hard to read. So it's difficult to sort of like get that from just like watching some of his like funny YouTube clips and his funny accent and all of that. But it's dangerous to compare those two. Yeah. Seaburton, I think the problem with that self-publishing will ruin your career thing is that there is something to that, and then there is not. It really depends on what you want to do, right? Like if you want to publish romance, for example, or like even more smutty romance stuff, then self-publishing is exactly what you should do, and it is the way to maybe build up your career and then get published, potentially in other ways. It really depends on what your goal as an author is, and these like basic statements of "this will ruin your career" they're not helpful. The problem is that the self-publishing and writer communities on the internet are incredibly, I would argue from the outset, incredibly toxic when it comes to defending their way of doing stuff, and that's just like how the internet works, I guess, and it's frustrating because they have a point, and yes, there is obviously the way that like self-publishing is often misjudged and seen as lesser. I get that this can be frustrating, but they're also incredibly and there is certainly a problem if you assume that any self-published book will be as good as any mainstream published book. That's just not how that works, because yes, you can write a book and publish it self-publish it in a way that will that is equal in quality to anything that a mainstream publisher can do. And certainly there have been mainstream publishers that have been slacking off a lot when it comes to the quality and the things they provide. But when it comes to like professional editing, professional spell checking, all of that stuff, professional formatting, professional artworks, all of that stuff, mainstream publishers can just offer things that will elevate the quality of your book, that if you do that as a self-publisher, you have to invest so much fucking money to get the same level of professional editing, artworks, all of that stuff, that it is very difficult to do that. And going like, well, no, my self-published book is as good as that. No, because those things also matter to the quality of a text, I think. Amanda is a Strange Mentality paper. I don't think Amanda set off that storm. That discussion has been going on forever, in all over YouTube and all over Twitter, and probably yet now on Blue Sky and other platforms. that discussion has always been there, and I think it's more that in the very, very specifically incredibly small bubble of people that hang out on like three discords and sometimes reference each other in booktube videos, there she certainly had an impact because people watch that, and then someone picked it up. Some of the people that hang out on, say, like the Fireside Discord, or one or two others of that sort, picked that one up and got. I think that the Grimoire before that, those kind of people who are also self-published authors. I think that's sort of where that kind of struck a spark in that specific, incredibly small bubble, but in the larger scheme of things, like it's a large discussion that has always been around. So yeah, self-publishing can ruin your career depending on what you want your career to be. If your career is to, write dinosaur erotica like Chuck Tingle did, then self-publishing is definitely the way to go. But that's a very specific thing. If your goal is to write, say, serious literary fiction, then maybe self-publishing will in fact ruin your career. And between those two sort of like poles, there's so much like variation that I think it's just like difficult to make those kind of blanket statements. But I think it's important to think about that before you actually decide what to do with your writing, right? It's like, what's your goal of writing? Is it, if you want to become the next Thomas Pynchon, then self-publishing might not be the way to go. If your goal is to be the next Colleen Hoover or the next Chuck Tingle, then yes, self-publishing is the way to go. But those are choices that you need to sort of be aware of, I think. And the self-publishing is so much better than mainstream publishing is just as toxic, I think, at the end of the day, as a blanket statement, as would be that mainstream publishing is so much better than self-publishing, because no, it's not. It depends. All that fucking nuance, it's really bad, right? We should stop having nuance. Yes, I mean, self-publishing can be a viable route. That's the point. It can be. It depends on what your ambitions and goals are with writing. I feel like with with writing text, right? The goal should never. I mean, if you're trying to be a serious writer, by which I mean, if you care about your stories, then your goal should not be to become famous and rich, because that's not going to work. If your goal is to become rich, or at least make a living as a writer, then you need to write to market, and then you need to write to very specific things. And that's something that you can potentially do quicker and faster as a self-published author, because you can see that, right? It's like something like Fourth Wing goes through the roof and is hyped and everyone loves it, or at least a lot of people buy it. And if you're a self-published author and you're fairly competent at writing a story, right? All of these ifs, you can bang out a bunch of like dragon romantasy stuff relatively quickly. Get it, write it in like 6 months, and have someone, if you want to, do the editing stuff on it, slap a cover on it. You're out in 6 months. That's far below the turnover rate that a mainstream publisher has. So in that regard, but that's if you don't care about your story. That's if you care about writing. In the same way for like romance, like writing like 100-page romance novel, or like a 50-page romance novel, or a short story, or whatever. You can do that relatively quickly, and you can adapt to like things that are currently happening in a lot of ways, and you're faster as a self-published author in that regard. So it works that way. But that's a different goal from becoming, writing the story that you really want to write. Those are two different things. Yes, dinosaur erotica is a larger subgenre than you might think, Nexi. It does exist. Chuck Tingle obviously writes queer dinosaur erotica and other erotica, queer everything erotica at this point. Highly recommend him, because his actual horror novels, both Bury Your Gaze and Camp Damascus, are really good, and the dinosaur stuff is just like fun. My pet Triceratops billionaire craves gay ass is certainly a story that is interesting. Yeah, that's like another thing, right? Like fame can be hard to navigate as well. Oh fuck, we're running out of time. Like seriously, we should probably go back to the whole sprinting thing if I want to be out at 1/2 past to get to the gym. See, I'm really bad at like sticking to these things. Maybe I should just like do more casual hangout live streams where we don't sprint or where I don't have like a deadline of having to run to the gym at this specific hour. Maybe something to think about in the future. For now, I'll be trying to write something, and I'll be back shortly before 1/2 past, and then I'll run to the gym. Britton, if you're going to bed, good night. Same for you, Nexi, in case you decide to do that. All right, I am back, but only very quickly because I gotta run to actually catch my bus. Good night, Nexi, in case you have gone to bed, and good night, Britain. And yeah, I'll try to record the video for On Stranger Tides today. I'm gonna get those pirate videos out as long as I can. We'll see how it goes. If it doesn't work out, because filming in the outside also makes me depend on weather and the construction going on out there and all of that stuff. So it's a bit of a risk I'm taking there. But if not, I guess I'll just record it tomorrow or on Saturday or on Sunday. There's enough time to talk about all those pirate books now, and I'm sure I can talk about other stuff in the meantime as well. So maybe I'll finally manage that video on books I'm excited for this year. Let's find out. All right. Well, thanks everybody for sticking around. No stream tomorrow as I'll be at the doctor's, and videos and stuff. And I guess next week we'll do the usual monthly live stream as well. And yeah, been fun hanging out with you again. So see you around.